This is the RadExpand 5 Plus. It's an upgraded version of Rad's popular folder, the RadExpand 5. Enhancements have been made to the motor, the battery, and comfort features. So, how do these new additions and the extra $300 affect the RadExpand experience? Well, it turns out quite a bit. So let's take a ride and see what's new from the RadExpand 5 Plus. Welcome back, friends. I'm Mike, and if you're new here, go ahead and subscribe to our channel so you can help spread the word to other viewers just like you who are learning about their next e-bike purchase. So, with that out of the way, right off the bat, this is a new version of the RadExpand 5 released back in 2022. And from our testing, we can confidently say that this version, the Plus version, shows just how far Rad Power Bikes continues to evolve with each new iteration. So, let's go over the three biggest areas of what makes the RadExpand 5 Plus stand out to us. First off, and new for the RadExpand 5 Plus, is going from a cadence sensor to a new torque sensor activation for its 750 watt motor. This new torque sensor has a more natural feel when pedaling, and as you will see in the range test, gave us much better mileage than we expected. Also, if you didn't know, this bike folds up. The folding aspect is a huge cornerstone of the RadExpand's overall appeal, especially for those on the go who travel or RV a lot, or even maybe those who are just tight on storage space at home. Next up is a big nod to Rad Power Bikes in the safety department. Not only does the RadExpand 5 Plus here UL 2271 and UL 2849 certified, but they now have Safe Shield battery technology on the 720 watt-hour battery. And this new technology is another step forward in battery fire safety when it comes to e-bikes, and it's not entirely new. This is already a feature in electric vehicles. To simplify it, Safe Shield battery tech is where each individual cell is shielded in a fire-resistant barrier, helping to prevent runoffs should one cell get too hot. While there's plenty more to talk about with this bike, those three highlights stood out the most to us, and now let's quickly run through the rest of the specs, and then we'll jump into our testing data. Starting at the ground level, the tires on the RadExpand 5 Plus are CST BFTs, and they're sized at 20 by 4 inches with a light off-road tread pattern. The RadExpand came equipped with Gemma hydraulic disc brakes with 180mm rotors. This is one of the upgrades over the Plus model, as the other Expand has mechanical disc brakes. The new motor from Rad Power is a torque sensor, as I already mentioned, but another great spec is the fact that it has 64 Nm of torque, which I found to be enough for most hills I encountered, which we'll highlight here in a bit when we go to our hill test. We were stoked to see the upgraded RadExpand version here has suspension in the form of an X-Show Strong C hydraulic fork that carries 50mm of travel. And the brand must be listening to your comments, as suspension was a top comment off the last RadExpand review. This bike only comes in one frame size, and the folks over at Rad Power say it will fit riders ranging from 410 to 510. There are two color options. Here we have slate blue, and there's also a stone tan color option to pick from. Up in the cockpit, you have a low-rise BMX style handlebar. On the left, you have the PAS control buttons along with a power button and display menu controls, as well as the turn signal buttons. In the center is the full color LCD display where you can check out your speeds, odometer, pedal assist levels, and even lesser seen things like the remaining range estimation. I think I liked it better in theory than in practice, as it didn't align with my actual range test results, but it was at least erring on the side of giving me more miles than I expected and not less. And over on the right is the grip twist throttle and the Shimano 7-speed drivetrain. And speaking of that drivetrain, up front there's a 48T chainring, and in the rear a 14 to 32T cog, and we found to be a very practical range for pedaling the RadExpand. Finishing things off, on the rear of the bike there's a nice cargo rack that's rated for 59 pounds, and then little practical touches like LED lighting front and rear, turn signals, as well as fenders over both tires for those rainy day rides. All right, to give you guys accurate data on braking, we use a consistent approach for every bike we review. We have the same rider conduct a brake test by accelerating the bike to 20 miles an hour, applying the brakes at a predetermined line, and then we measure the distance needed for the bike to come to a complete stop. And to ensure we get it right, we repeat this test 3 times and then get the average stopping distance from those 3 runs. With the RadExpand 5 Plus here, we got a score of 19 feet 6 inches. And that's a very solid score for any e-bike and well under our 25-foot safe stop threshold. To put that into perspective, that places this braking score in the top 20% of all e-bikes we've tested across every class. And while we don't see a ton of these Gemma hydraulic disc brakes here at EBR, we're always pumped to see new brands perform so well. Now, we can't speak to the longevity of this brand as we just don't have enough data, but so far, it looks promising with these great braking test numbers. Also, it's worth mentioning we often see 180mm rotors like we have here, but in this case, Rad Power Bikes went with a 2.3mm thick rotor, which is a beefier choice than we normally see that's actually usually around 1.8mm. So, what does a thicker rotor do for the bike? Well, in theory, it should take longer to heat up and ultimately only help the life of the pads as they get less hot. Thicker rotors on a bike designed to fold just make sense in case contact happens to the rotor. And with that, I personally put about 50 miles on the bike this week in real-world conditions, and the brakes stopped safely every time I asked them to, and I never had any concerns with braking, so all in all, really good job in the braking department. All right, when it comes to speed, I tested each of the RadExpand's 5 pedal assist levels here on our local multi-use paths. So let's head outside and see how it did. All right, out here on the RadExpand 5, and I'm currently in 6th gear out of the total 7 it offers, using no pedal assist. We're gonna go through all 5 gears and let you know, or through all 5 levels of pedal assist and let you know where each speed tops out at. Currently going 9 miles an hour with no help from the motor, so let's kick on level 1. You get a little boost there. It's pretty subtle, but it's also important to remember this is a torque sensor, so it's measuring how much effort I'm pushing the pedals, and in return it varies its assistance level trying to match my effort. So level 1 has us here at 11.3, 11.4, 11.5. Let's go to level 2, and that's got us 12.2 I saw. Maybe 13, yeah, 13.2, 13.3. So let's go to level 3. I'm also going to go to 7th gear. And that's got us to 14.6. Saw 14.9. So let's go to level 4. And that's picked things up over 16. 16.1 I saw, 16.3. All right, so let's go to the 5th level. And that one you can probably hear and see that it definitely gives a good boost. I'm seeing 18, 19, 19.3. And then no trouble hitting that full 20 miles an hour. So all 5 levels, the speed distribution and power distribution is pretty consistent. I would say that it largely varies again on your leg input because of the torque sensor, but keeping a pretty middle of the road effort pace. Those are the numbers we got. All right, let's do a throttle test. So I'm at a dead stop, pedal assist level 5, and I'm going to just use throttle only and see how long it takes the bike to get to 20 miles an hour. On your mark, get set, go. Off pretty quick. You can hear the motor just a bit. 14, 15, 16, 18. Time. Beginning with PAS deactivated, so level 0, I pedaled the bike by leg power alone and tried to keep a relaxed pace. My average speed to start on leg power alone was about 9 miles an hour. Kicking things off in Class 2 settings, I activated PAS 1 and I felt a very subtle bump in assistance that brought my speed up to 11.5 miles an hour. And as I climbed through each level of pedal assistance, my speed increased at a pretty even pace to 13.3 miles an hour in PAS 2, 14.9 in PAS 3, 16.3 in PAS4, and finally 20.7 in PAS5. This new motor felt like it had a good acceleration from point to point, and each level felt distinct. You can genuinely get good use out of all 5 levels of pedal assist, which is always nice to see. It's also worth mentioning here, being that the bike has a torque sensor, in theory, your results may vary. A torque sensor measures the amount of force I'm applying to the pedals, so if I pedal harder, it gives me more pedal assistance, and on the flip side, if I give less leg power, it backs off and gives less pedal assistance. Rad could offer a wider gearing range in the future. That would further enhance the experience. We found around 18 miles an hour. We wish we had just one more gear to move to. It would be easier to keep pressure on the drivetrain to make 20 miles an hour a bit easier to hit. You have to move your legs kind of quickly to help the motor get to those top Class 2 speeds. But overall, these results were really solid. The RadExpand not only boasts big torque numbers, but lives up to its Class 2 classifications, having no trouble reaching Class 2 speeds with smooth and even power through all 5 levels. Everybody always wants to know how far an e-bike will go, and we get it, range anxiety is a real thing. So, how far will the RadExpand 5 Plus go on a single charge? Well, we have some results we think you're gonna like. For the range test, we run it in 2 sections. First, we charge up the RadExpand to 100% and hit the road in the lowest PAS setting, PAS level 1, and see how far it goes until the battery runs dry. Then we charge it up again, hit the road again on PAS5 this time, the highest level, until it runs dry a second time. For some context, the folks over at Rad Power say this bike has a range of anywhere between 20 and 60 miles. So on the first run in PAS1, we managed to ride the bike for a whopping 82.9 miles. To help put that into perspective, that took us a staggering 7 hours and 18 minutes, averaging 11.4 miles an hour, and climbing a total elevation of 1,450 feet. And as you can guess, we were pretty surprised. That's more than you typically see on a 720 watt-hour battery, especially on a bike with these 4-inch tires. On the second run, with a freshly charged battery, we covered 39.1 miles over the course of 2 hours and 28 minutes, averaging 15.7 miles an hour, and gained 898 feet in elevation. Again, really solid results. Overall, the RadExpand 720 watt-hour battery paired to the new Rad Power 750 watt torque sensing motor proved to be a great match, balancing some awesome range with solid battery efficiency. Our hill test is run on our local multi-use paths and has been officially named by the city, not us, Hellhole. I'll let you decide why it's named that, but for some context, it's 1/3 of a mile long and carries an average grade of 12%. And it's just one of those hills where you see nearly all cyclists walking their bike up. So yeah, it's basically that kind of hill. In order to keep our results consistent, we use the same hill tester, Justin, for all of our hill tests. We run the test in 2 portions. The first is on throttle only, letting the motor do all of the work, where Justin simply steers and observes the performance. On the second run, Justin will activate PAS5 and pedal along with the motor to see how the bike compares results between those 2 runs.
Okay, we're out at Hellhole testing the new RadExpand 5 Plus. Love the fact that you got the front suspension on this, but anyways, the hill test so far feels pretty good. Down to 10 miles an hour through this steep section. 9, 8, holding pretty strong right about that 8. We'll see if it dips any lower. Motor, I'd say, is about average on noise. It's not overly whiny. You can hear it. You know, with these fatter tires, sometimes I hear the tires more than the motor. Here I'm hearing the motor a little bit more. It's not obtrusive by any means or obnoxious, and it held pretty steady through that section, so I'll let you listen to it through this last steep, punchy section here. So you can hear, like normal, the motor picks up as you kind of speed up, but it sounds pretty good. Got down to about 8 miles per hour was kind of the minimum on that section too. You'll notice, I don't know how well you can see in the screen, this is capped at the 750 watts. So they don't go over to kind of stay well within those CPSC guidelines. and felt pretty good. We'll go to the tape and kind of check and see the results versus the previous model, but overall it felt pretty solid on throttle and it can definitely get uphill hill. Okay, we're back at it on the RadExpand with the pedal test. We're gonna see how it does. So far it feels pretty good. It's at 64 newton meters of torque on this motor. I looked it up after the throttle test. Didn't feel quite as peppy as the new Radsters. Pretty solid so far. Haven't had to shift, pedaling softly down 10 miles an hour. Again, I'm in 7th gear still, and just held solid right at that 10, 11 miles an hour. Feels really good. Motor about the same as on the throttle. I'll let you listen through this section here. I'm going to downshift. Yeah, you do hear the motor right about average. What I would expect, held right about 10, 11 through that last steep section. So I'll help to downshift a little bit. Shift back up here. And yeah, absolutely you won't have any hard time climbing hills on this thing. I'm not pedaling very hard, and it's done really well. So I'm curious to see how it does versus the previous version.
Okay. So as you saw on the first run using throttle only, the RadExpand made it up hellhole in just 1 minute and 38 seconds with an average speed of 11.1 miles an hour. On the second run, when putting some leg muscle into the mix along with PAS5, the RadExpand made it up hellhole again, this time in 1 minute 23 seconds with an average speed of 13.1 miles an hour. Those are firmly in the middle of the pack results when compared to all e-bikes, but the throttle result feels even more impressive. When we filter for just folding e-bikes, a lot of those fail the throttle test and post an incomplete result. Bottom line, these numbers show the 750 watt motor paired with its 64 newton meters of torque were more than enough to climb even the meanest hills here in southern Utah. So if you're looking to use the RadExpand in an area with some intimidating hills, the RadExpand has the gusto to get the job done. All right, for our last ride, let's head outside and see how the RadExpand 5 Plus feels and handles. All right, out here on the Rad Power Bikes RadExpand 5 Plus. And this is a folding bike, so you can go ahead and take your traditional geometry and throw it out the window. But riding position wise, I'd say they did a pretty good job. I'm on the taller side. They say this bike will fit riders between 4'10" and 5'10". Well, I'm 5'11". And I find the bike to feel a tad bit small, but still ride very comfortably. I actually spent about 2.5 hours on the bike yesterday, going a total of just shy of 40 miles. And I never got off feeling like it was uncomfortable or feeling sore like you tend to get with some bikes. So kudos to them. Even outside of their height range, it was a very comfortable ride for me. Now you do have some adjustability in the form of the handlebar. You can adjust the tilt of it kind of away or towards yourself a little bit, and then additionally you can lower or raise the seat post height to dial in a fit that kind of works best for you. The bike does have suspension down below. It's got an X-Show hydraulic front fork with a lockout feature. It also has 50 millimeters of travel, and because of the geometry of this bike, you kind of lean on the handlebars more than you would on, say, a cruiser. And so I've actually felt the fork giving good feedback on bumps in the road. Sometimes when you're more upright body positioned, most of your weight is back on the saddle and you don't really feel much from the fork. But in this case, because you're slightly more leaned forward, I'd say you do get the benefit of the fork, which is great. There's no rear suspension, so it's not full suspension, but that front fork does a good job. Another area where comfort shines is probably from these larger 4-inch tires. The tires are made by CST. They have a bit of an off-road tread pattern, and they're sized 20 inches by 4 inches. Overall, they feel good on the road. They do have a slight road hum to them, but that's because of the beefier tread. There's always going to be a bit of a give and take there, but overall they feel good. And then the torque sensor is an area where this bike really shines. It is a 750 watt rear hub motor. which is pretty typical and nothing surprising to you guys. But the torque sensor they've added this time on this model feels really good. It feels pretty natural, which is always a good thing in a torque sensor. That's what it's trying to mimic, is trying to match your effort that you give the pedals, and in exchange give you that much assistance back from the motor. And I feel like it did a pretty solid job of doing that. So overall, I've enjoyed my time on the Rad Power. I think it's a comfortable bike, and then you've got the added plus of being able to fold it up and put it in the back of a small car or an SUV, so that's pretty cool. So let's head back in and continue this. So despite being a folding e-bike, I was really surprised to find this upgraded Plus version to have a really nice ride comfort, and even more surprising was the better handling over nearly all other folding e-bikes we've ever tested. And when I do a little digging on why that is, it comes down to this handlebar. You see, other folders we've tested all have the same elongated handlebar stem, which places the grips in a much higher and in a more narrow hand placement. And we think that that was done to make for an easier folding experience, so the handlebars are out of the way when you fold it down. But that leads to a ride that's not the best in terms of handling. There's more rattle in the longer collapsible stem, and the narrower bars sometimes make things just feel less sound overall. But with this low-rise BMX style handlebar, it not only folds up just fine, but more importantly, it handles much better than its peers. No rattle, nice control from the wider bar, just a noticeably better experience from a folding e-bike. When you combine the handlebar with Rad's other feel improvements like the torque sensor and the suspension fork, it just takes the RadExpand experience up a level for folding e-bikes. The original RadExpand 5, it's great, but this definitely feels like a better bike to us. All right, so we've gone over a lot today. What's the final takeaway of all of this? Well, I'd say the RadExpand 5 Plus is a welcomed refresh of the previous model, the RadExpand 5. It's got better range, better braking, more features like a front suspension fork, an updated 750 watt motor with those 64 Newton meters of torque, a full color LCD display, and it's loaded with safety features. It just feels like Rad Power Bikes is investing in not only their own growth, but the growth of the e-bike industry as a whole. For those of you who love to travel, like RVers and van lifers, this fold-up design will be appealing for packing your bike along, especially when there's limited space. And with all the upgrades in the comfort department, this bike just rides really well. We found it to be comfortable even on all-day rides like that 7-hour range test. With all that praise, we still found a little room for improvement. While the estimated range feature on the display is awesome in theory, it fell short in practice, and we look forward to an update for that in the future. And while I like having a kickstand, especially on heavier folders like this, I found the placement of this kickstand to clip the edge of my heel when riding. I think it's more of a byproduct of having less frame room for this folding design, but it can be a bit distracting on daily riding. However, if you have smaller feet, you likely won't even notice this. But overall, these are really small complaints. Bottom line, the RadExpand 5 Plus from Rad Power Bikes is just a solid folding bike that performed really well. It's priced under $2,000, and I think many people will find it to be a great choice if you're in the market for a folding e-bike that punches above its weight class in our test results. All right, folks, that's a wrap on today with the RadExpand 5 Plus. Thanks for hanging out with me, and if you liked it or it helped you make a decision, consider subscribing to our channel, liking this video for more content just like this. We'll see you next time.